The bell over the door gave a tired jingle as Emily Carter pushed her way into Hansen's martial arts academy. The heavy glass door closed behind her with a thud, muting the sounds of traffic from the street outside. In its place came the distinct symphony of the dojo, the squeak of bare feet on mats, the sharp snap of uniforms, the staccato rhythm of students ki-ing with every strike. Emily's sneakers squeaked against the polished floor as she made her way past the lobby and into the viewing area. She was here for one reason only, her daughter. Across the wide expanse of blue mats, 16-year-old Madison was finishing a drill with 3 other teens. Her movements were sharp but still a little uncertain, the kind of effort that carried more heart than polish. Spotting her mother, Madison grinned and waved. "Mom! Over here!" Emily lifted a hand in return, smiling softly. At 39, she wasn't the kind of person most people noticed twice. Shoulder-length brown hair streaked with gray framed a face untouched by makeup. An oversized sweatshirt and loose track pants hung comfortably on her slender frame. To anyone watching, she looked like an ordinary suburban mom waiting for her kid to finish practice. But appearances were deceiving. Emily dropped into a chair near the viewing area, pulling her phone from her bag. She scrolled absently, pretending to check emails, but her ears tuned automatically to the sound of the class. Years ago, she had trained in halls like this, under lights like these, when sweat and bruises had been part of her daily existence. That life was gone now, or so she told herself. On the mats, Sensei Derek Hansen paced like a general inspecting his troops. He was tall, broad across the shoulders, and every inch of him seemed designed to command attention. His black belt gleamed against the bright white of his gi. His voice carried sharp and hard across the room. "Higher, Lopez. My grandmother kicks better than that." The students chuckled nervously. Emily frowned. That edge of mockery in his tone rubbed her raw. She had known instructors who inspired through respect, who demanded discipline without humiliation. Derek Hansen was not one of them. 2 mothers beside her whispered. "He's tough," one said with a tight smile. "But my son's already a brown belt. He gets results." The other nodded, though uneasily. "Results, sure. But sometimes I think he goes too far." Emily's eyes stayed on the mat. Hansen's movements were clean, his form sharp, but arrogance clung to him like a shadow. She had seen men like him before, skilled enough to impress, blind enough to believe themselves untouchable. After another 20 minutes, the session wrapped. Madison bounded over, cheeks flushed, ponytail damp with sweat. "Ready, Mom? I just need my water bottle." "Of course," Emily said, slipping her phone away. "How was practice?" "Good. Sensei Derek says I might test for green belt next month." Pride bloomed in Emily's chest. Martial arts had pulled Madison out of her shell, helped her find a confidence she'd once lacked. Whatever misgivings Emily had about the instructor, she couldn't deny the results in her daughter. But just as they were gathering Madison's things, Hansen's booming voice cut through the dojo. "All right, before we bow out, who wants to see something fun?" The chatter stopped instantly. Every head turned toward him. Emily felt a twinge of unease. Derek's gaze swept the room like a spotlight before settling on her. His lips curled into a smirk. "You there? Madison's mom, right?" His voice was loud enough for everyone to hear. Emily froze, Madison clutching at her sleeve. "Yes," she answered carefully. Derek strode across the mats, confidence radiating from every step. "Since you've been watching us train, I thought maybe you'd like to try it out yourself. Just a little demonstration." Emily's stomach tightened. She knew where this was heading. "That won't be necessary. We were just leaving." "Oh, come on," Derek pressed, turning toward the class as if inviting them in on the joke. "Don't tell me you've never watched an action movie and thought, I could do that." A ripple of awkward laughter passed through the room. Madison's hand slid into Emily's, damp with nervous sweat. "Not really," Emily said flatly. Derek leaned closer, lowering his voice just enough while still making sure the entire room could hear. How about just a friendly spar? Nothing serious. It'll be a good lesson, for everyone. The other parents shifted uncomfortably. Some frowned. Others looked away. But no one spoke up. Emily's jaw tightened. She could walk away, ignore the bait. But the way Derek smirked, mocking, superior, ignited something she hadn't felt in years. One condition, she said evenly. His eyebrows lifted. Oh yeah? What's that? When this is over, you apologize to your students. They deserve better than this spectacle. His laughter cut like glass. You'll be the one apologizing, to the floor. The students winced at his cruelty. Madison whispered frantically, Mom, don't. You don't have to prove anything. Emily slipped off her jacket. Her arms, lean and corded with strength, caught the light. For the first time, some of the parents and teens looked at her differently. Sometimes, Emily told her daughter softly, bullies need reminding. The room hushed as she stepped onto the mat. Her tired mom shuffle melted away, replaced by something else entirely, balanced, purposeful, lethal in its calm. Few noticed the shift. Derek did not. Let's give the kids a show, he announced grandly, bouncing on his toes. Emily stood still, her breathing measured, eyes steady. She hadn't fought in 13 years. But her body remembered. The rhythm of combat, the weight of an opponent's energy, the patience to wait for the right moment, it was all still there, coiled like a storm beneath the surface. Derek lunged first, fast and confident. His punch cut through the air. It met nothing. Emily moved a fraction, her body angling so subtly it was almost invisible. Gasps broke out as Derek stumbled, missing completely. He reset, scowling. Lucky dodge. He attacked again, jab, cross, hook. Each punch sharp, each one slicing through empty air. Emily slipped past them like smoke. Her stillness, her calm, was more unnerving than any counterattack. The room's atmosphere shifted. What had begun as a joke now felt electric, dangerous. Even the youngest students sensed it, they weren't watching a beginner. Emily's eyes never left Derek's. She hadn't come here to fight. She had come to remind him what real strength looked like. And this was only the beginning. The dojo had gone silent. The kind of silence that wasn't empty, but charged, like the air before a thunderstorm. Every parent, every student leaned forward, waiting to see what would happen next. On the mat, Derek Hansen bounced lightly on his toes, his smile still plastered in place, though the corners twitched with irritation. He had expected an easy spectacle, something to entertain his students, stroke his ego. Yet something about the woman standing across from him unnerved him. Emily Carter didn't posture. She didn't pace or stretch theatrically. She simply stood there, her weight evenly balanced, her breathing slow and deep. Her eyes stayed fixed on him, steady and calm. "Ready, Mrs. Carter?" Derek said loudly, his voice carrying across the room. Emily didn't answer. She just inclined her head slightly. "Good," Derek grinned, louder now, playing to the room. "Kids, watch carefully. This is why we train. So you don't end up helpless when someone thinks they can fight without experience." He lunged, a sharp right cross cutting through the air with practiced precision. The punch struck nothing. Emily's body shifted just an inch, enough for the strike to graze past her face. To the untrained eye, she barely moved at all. Derek's fist hit empty space, his momentum carrying him forward awkwardly. Gasps rippled through the students. Derek stumbled, caught himself, and reset. "Lucky dodge," he muttered, his voice strained. Emily said nothing. She returned to her centered stance, waiting. Derek's grin tightened. He launched a flurry this time, jab, cross, hook. His strikes were sharp, fast, and technically clean, but none landed. Emily swayed, slipped, and stepped just outside each attack, her movements fluid and effortless. It was like watching smoke avoid being grasped. The room had shifted. The nervous chuckles were gone. No one laughed now. They held their breath. "What's she doing?" whispered one of the teenage boys. She's reading him," another murmured. Frustration flared in Derek's eyes. His punches grew harder, sharper, more desperate. Sweat dampened his brow. Emily's expression never changed. Calm. Steady. Waiting. "Stand still and fight." Derek snapped, his voice cracking with anger. "I am fighting," Emily said softly. "I'm just choosing how." The words froze the air. Even the youngest students understood, this wasn't running. This was mastery. Derek snarled and tried to switch tactics. He threw a heavy haymaker, putting his weight behind it. Emily dipped under, smooth as water. For the first time, she touched him, just a featherlight tap to his exposed ribs as he spun past. The crowd exhaled collectively. It hadn't hurt, not even close, but the message was unmistakable. I could have ended this right there. Derek spun back, face flushed, eyes wide with something dangerously close to fear. "What are you playing at?" "Hit me." Emily's voice was quiet, almost gentle. "I already did." The class erupted in whispers. Some students looked at their instructor differently now, not with awe, but with doubt. Derek, panicked, shifted into his wrestling base. If he couldn't land strikes, he'd use his size. He dropped low and lunged forward in a powerful double-leg takedown attempt. Wrong move. Emily stepped into his momentum, her hands sliding to the back of his head and shoulder. With barely a shift of weight, she redirected him forward and down. It looked almost effortless, grace instead of force. Derek hit the mat face first with a thunderous smack. The sound echoed off the walls. The dojo gasped. A mother covered her mouth. One boy whispered, "No way." Emily stepped back, giving him space. Derek lay still for a heartbeat, stunned by the sheer impossibility of what had just happened. He had attacked with full strength, full momentum. And yet, she had guided him into the ground like a child tripping over his own feet. Slowly, red-faced and breathing hard, he pushed himself up on his elbows. His students stared with wide eyes. Their untouchable instructor suddenly looked very human. "How?" Derek panted. "How did you do that?" Emily extended her hand to him. Her voice was calm, steady, without mockery. 13 years of practice before I ever stepped into this room." Derek slapped her hand away, scrambling to his feet. His pride burned hotter than his embarrassment. Around the mat, whispers grew. A few teens were already pulling out their phones. Emily's daughter, Madison, stepped forward, her eyes bright with awe. She had never seen this side of her mother. "You don't understand," she said to the room, her voice trembling but clear. "She's not just my mom. She's Emily Zhao. 3-time world champion." The dojo fell into absolute silence. Phones lit up as older students searched the name. Gasps followed, murmurs spreading like fire. They found the articles, the videos, the highlights. The woman standing calmly in front of them had once been the quiet storm, a fighter who had dominated the sport, and then disappeared without explanation. Derek's face drained of color. The room's energy had turned. His students were no longer looking at him. They were looking at her. And for the first time in years, Emily Carter, Emily Zhao, felt the storm inside her stir again. The dojo hung in stunned silence. Derek Hansen stood on shaky legs, sweat dripping down his temples, his chest heaving with ragged breaths. His students stared at him wide-eyed, not with admiration as they had before, but with uncertainty, almost pity. Across from him, Emily Carter stood perfectly composed. Not a drop of sweat, not a single break in her breathing. She hadn't so much as raised her voice. Her stillness was more damning than any victory pose. Then Madison's words broke the silence like a blade. She's not just my mom, she's Emily Zhao. 3-time world champion. The name landed like thunder. Phones lit up, fingers swiping frantically. The whispers started immediately. It's her. Look, videos. No way, that's the silent storm. She beat Anya Kovalev in under a minute. I've seen this match. On the screens, old highlight reels sprang to life, a younger Emily dismantling opponents with uncanny precision, her calm expression never wavering. A predator cloaked in quiet composure. The woman who had just humbled Derek Hansen in front of his own students was once a legend. Derek's face went pale, then flushed crimson. His eyes darted from Emily to the faces of his students. He was losing them, and he knew it. Emily didn't gloat. She didn't need to. She simply stood there, her gaze steady, waiting. Finally, Derek swallowed hard and forced the words out. I owe you an apology. And I owe one to all of you, he said, turning to his students. His voice, usually booming and arrogant, cracked at the edges. What I did just now wasn't teaching. It was ego. I made this about me when it should have been about you. The admission hit the room heavily. Some students looked shocked. Others, oddly, looked relieved. Emily's voice broke the silence, calm and firm. The strongest thing a fighter can do is admit when they're wrong. Respect doesn't come from intimidation, Derek. It comes from humility. He met her gaze for a moment, then nodded stiffly. You're right. Derek turned back to his class. Everyone, take this lesson to heart. Mrs. Carter, no, Emily Zhao, showed me what real martial arts is. Not just skill, but restraint. Control. Wisdom. The students bowed respectfully toward Emily. Parents exchanged glances, some in awe, some in disbelief that they had been sitting beside greatness all this time. Madison stood straighter, her eyes shining. She looked at her mother as though seeing her for the first time. Mom, why didn't you ever tell me? Emily's chest tightened. She had dreaded this question for years. She knelt so her eyes met her daughter's, her voice soft but heavy with truth. Because that life took too much from me, Emily said. Your uncle, my brother, was rushing to one of my matches when he died in a car accident. I blamed myself. I walked away from it all. The titles, the glory, everything. I promised myself I would never fight again. Her throat tightened, but she held Madison's gaze. I wanted you to grow up with a mother, not a fighter. That was more important than anything. Tears welled in Madison's eyes, but they weren't of sorrow, they were pride. She threw her arms around her mother, hugging her tightly. You're still my hero, she whispered. The dojo watched quietly, many of the students visibly moved. Even Derek looked shaken, though whether by humility or humiliation was unclear. Emily rose, her arm around her daughter's shoulders. She turned back to the students, her voice carrying softly but clearly. Strength isn't about how hard you can hit, or how many medals you've won. It's about knowing when not to use it. Real martial arts is restraint. It's respect. Remember that. The room bowed to her instinctively, as though she were still the champion who once commanded arenas. As Emily and Madison gathered their things, Derek approached once more, his tone stripped of arrogance. Mrs. Zhao. Emily, thank you. You reminded me of something I'd forgotten. She studied him for a long moment before nodding. Then make sure you never forget it again. With that, she walked out of the dojo with Madison at her side, the buzz of whispers trailing after her. For the first time in 13 years, Emily felt the storm inside her awake again, not the fire of competition, but the steady certainty of someone who knew her strength, and finally chose how to use it. And for Madison, the revelation was more than pride. It was a beginning.